The grocery store was buzzing with ordinary life. Carts rolling, children whining, scanners beeping. Then came the sound no man of power expected to hear. Declined, flashing across the register screen in angry red. Ethan Cole, once a billionaire, now stood frozen. A man 2 carts back smirked. "That watch costs more than my truck, but you can't pay for cereal?" Laughter rippled through the line. A teenager whispered loudly, "What's the matter, Mr. Wall Street? No Wi-Fi for your crypto today?" Every word pierced deeper. Ethan forced his jaw tight, heat crawling up his neck. He could leave, storm out, pretend it was a mistake. But his pride trapped him, locking him under the weight of judgmental eyes. For the first time, Ethan wasn't a man of status. He was a spectacle. And in that humiliation, his story began with the sound of decline. Silence was about to swallow Ethan whole when a voice, small yet steady, cut through the noise. "You can take my money, mister." Gasps, a ripple of disbelief. Ethan turned and saw her, a little black girl, no taller than his hip, braids tied with fading ribbons, scuffed shoes from too many playground battles. In her tiny hand, she clutched a wrinkled bag of coins and ragged dollar bills. Treasure for her, pity for him. Ethan's chest tightened. "I can't take that," he whispered, shaken less by her offer than by her innocence. But the girl stood firm. "My mom says if someone's standing alone, you stand next to them. That's what good people do." For a moment, the grocery crowd had no words. They had mocked him, dismissed him, laughed at him. Yet this child, armed with nothing but kindness, stood in defense of a man they had buried in shame. Ethan left the store with burning ears and trembling hands, the laughter still echoing. But by the time he reached his truck, the sting had metastasized into something worse. His phone buzzed endlessly. A grainy video was already online. Him frozen at the counter, the big red "declined" flashing, and the girl's small hand stretching out. The caption read, "When your billions don't buy bread." Within hours, it spiraled across the internet. People who had never known Ethan's face now knew his shame. Memes mocked him, clips edited with circus music spread like wildfire. Ethan, once a man who could command boardrooms, was reduced to the punchline of strangers. But somewhere in the humiliation, that little girl's voice replayed, quiet but unshaken. "You can take my money." And for reasons he couldn't understand yet, those words hurt more than the laughter. He should have driven away, disappeared like he always did. But when Ethan saw the little girl and her mother walking home, something held him back. "Wait," he called, his voice softer than he'd expected. The mother, Dani Carter, a nurse still in her blue scrubs, turned with wary eyes. "Is she bothering you?" she asked, half embarrassed, half protective. "No," Ethan said quickly. "She saved me from a lot of shame back there." Dani studied him carefully, suspicion written all over her tired face. But Naya tugged her mother's hand. "Can he come for root beer, Mama?" Dani hesitated, then sighed. "Just for a bit." That evening, Ethan sat on a worn couch with mismatched cushions, sipping flat root beer while Naya proudly quizzed him on spelling words. For the first time in years, Ethan wasn't hiding behind wealth. He was just a man, humbled in a stranger's home. After dinner, Naya disappeared into her room and returned clutching something wrapped in tissue paper. "This is for you," she said shyly. Ethan unwrapped it to find a pressed penny, painted purple with crooked letters scratched across, "Helper coin." "Why are you giving this to me?" Ethan asked, his throat dry. Naya shrugged, her smile fearless. "So you remember, you can still help even when you're sad." Dani shook her head with a half laugh, half sigh. "She makes crafts for everyone, don't take it too seriously." But Ethan did. He closed his fingers over the coin, feeling its uneven ridges press into his palm like truth. That night, when he left their apartment, he tucked it into his pocket.
He had owned penthouses, yachts, watches worth more than houses, yet nothing had ever weighed heavier or meant more than a child's crooked coin. The next morning, Ethan found himself staring at the rusted swing set behind the abandoned community center. The weeds were waist-high, the slide cracked, the seesaw splintered like forgotten bones. He didn't know why he'd come here. Maybe because humiliation needs somewhere to breathe. Maybe because of the coin in his pocket. Rolling up his sleeves, Ethan bought a shovel and paint from the hardware store and began digging. Sweat dripped, his shirt clung, blisters formed. Passers-by stopped, some whispering, some laughing. "Isn't that the billionaire from the video?" one muttered. Ethan didn't flinch. For the first time, he wasn't running. Every board he tightened, every weed he pulled was an act of defiance, not against them, but against the version of himself that had lived for applause. And as the sun dipped low, he realized the playground wasn't the only thing being rebuilt.
That evening, Dani stopped by with Nia. She stood at the fence, arms crossed, watching Ethan hammer loose boards into place. "You know, folks around here don't forget easily," she said. "They'll remember that video longer than they'll remember this." Ethan paused, wiping sweat from his brow. "Then I'll keep showing up until they can't forget this." Dani studied him, suspicion softening into reluctant respect. Nia skipped past her mother and clapped her hands. "You're fixing it. Can I help paint?" Ethan smiled faintly. "Tomorrow, you can be the supervisor." Dani shook her head but couldn't hide the tiny curve of a smile. "Don't vanish, Mr. Cole. My daughter doesn't need another person promising to stay and then disappearing." Ethan looked at her seriously. "I won't vanish." And for the first time, he meant it. Just as the town began whispering about Ethan's strange new project, another figure entered the story. Riley Quinn, a sharp-eyed local reporter, showed up at the playground with a notebook in hand. "So, the billionaire builds a playground," she said dryly. "Trying to rebrand after your viral fall?" Ethan bristled. "I'm not here for headlines." Riley tilted her head, scribbling. "Then why are you here?" He didn't answer, but his silence spoke volumes. Riley smirked. "You're hiding in plain sight, Mr. Cole. That never lasts." As she walked away, Ethan felt the coin in his pocket burn like a warning. He wasn't just fixing swings, he was fixing himself. But people like Riley didn't believe in redemption. They believed in stories. And Ethan was becoming one, whether he liked it or not. The whispers grew louder. At the diner, at the gas station, even at the grocery store where it all began. "Saw him sweating with a shovel," one man chuckled. "Guess billionaires don't have gardeners anymore." Kids passing the playground stopped to stare. Some laughed, some didn't. A boy finally asked, "Why are you doing this?" Ethan looked at the cracked slide and replied softly, "Because no one else will." Word spread fast. Ethan Cole, once untouchable, was now building something with his hands. The same hands that had once signed billion-dollar contracts now held paintbrushes and tools. And though the laughter lingered, curiosity began to grow. Because even in a small town, even in gossip, action speaks louder than shame. And Ethan was starting to be seen differently, not as a fallen king, but as a man trying to stand. But then came the shadow. One afternoon, as Ethan tightened bolts on the slide, he felt it. Eyes on him. Looking up, he saw a man in a dark suit leaning against a sleek car parked across the street. Sunglasses, polished shoes, posture of control. He didn't move, didn't smile, didn't wave. He just watched. Ethan's chest tightened. He knew that stance anywhere. Gavin Stone, his ex-partner, the man who had ruined him. The humiliation hadn't been fate, it had been designed. Gavin lingered for a long moment, then slipped back into his car and drove off without a word. Ethan's knuckles whitened around the wrench.
For the first time since the decline, fear rippled beneath his determination. This wasn't just about shame anymore. It was about war. And the enemy had just arrived.
Gavin didn't wait long to make his move. Ethan found him outside Miss Pearl's Coffee and Books, leaning against the door frame like he owned the town. "You're trending, Ethan," Gavin drawled. "Spin it right, and we turn this into a comeback. I unlock your accounts, wipe the mess, and you get your throne back." Ethan's jaw clenched. "I walked away for a reason." Gavin's smile was razor thin. "Don't romanticize it. You were shoved out. You've been playing house with single moms and playgrounds while the world laughs." Ethan's chest tightened, the coin burning in his pocket. "You froze those accounts," he said. Gavin leaned closer, whispering, "I built you. Don't forget that." Ethan didn't answer. But for the first time, he realized the decline at the grocery store hadn't been bad luck. It had been sabotage. And Gavin wasn't done yet. By dawn, the playground mural was destroyed. Red spray paint smeared across the fresh words. Helper equals fraud. A doctored video surfaced online, edited to show Ethan in a hoodie with a spray can in hand. The town woke buzzing with suspicion. Neighbors whispered outside the post office. The grocery clerk crossed her arms instead of smiling. Ethan stood before the ruined wall, shoulders heavy, shame pressing in. But before despair could swallow him, Dani and Nia appeared with paint trays. "They can deface a wall," Dani said firmly, "but they don't get to decide who we are." Soon, Hank Miller arrived with ladders, Ms. Pearl with lemonade, and even Caleb Ortiz with a tiny paintbrush. Together, they painted again. Louder colors, braver strokes. Ethan dipped his brush, realizing this wasn't just about proving himself. It was about proving community could outshout cruelty. Ethan returned to the motel late, exhaustion heavy in his bones. A plain envelope waited at the door, no return address. Inside, one sheet of paper. His hands trembled as he unfolded it. Bold letters stretched across the page. "You can't outlast me. You couldn't before. You won't now." At the bottom was Gavin's unmistakable signature, a smear of arrogance in ink. Ethan sat on the edge of the bed, gripping the note until it crumpled. For years, Gavin's words had defined him, a shadow carved into every failure. But tonight, he felt something different. Not fear, resolve. He reached into his pocket, pulled out Naya's crooked purple coin, and held it tight. The ridges dug into his skin, grounding him. For the first time, he whispered back into the silence, "You're wrong. I already have something you can't take anymore." 2 days later, a notice appeared on the community board. Pending development, community center and playground lot. Ethan's heart sank. The LLC name on the paper was a familiar mask. Gavin's handprints, bold as ever. 60 days until demolition, unless someone stopped it. Ethan folded the sheet carefully, pulse pounding in his ears. Losing that land meant losing more than a playground. It meant losing the only anchor he had found in years. The thought of Dani, Nia, and the kids filled his chest with fire. He dialed Riley. "I need every trail, every shell company, every donor list. He's not just buying land. He's erasing proof that kindness works." On the other end, Riley's voice came firm. "Midnight, Miss Pearl's. Bring coffee." That night, Ethan parked near the playground, staring at the mural glowing faintly under the streetlight, and whispered, "Not again." Midnight at Ms. Pearl's coffee shop. The air heavy with roasted beans and exhaustion. Riley spread papers across the worn oak table, wire transfers, zoning permits, secret donors. Ethan leaned in, eyes sharp, scanning numbers with the precision of a man who once devoured ledgers like prey. Gavin's fortune was snaking through shell companies, laundering power into silence. Riley tapped the papers. "He didn't just humiliate you, he's erasing you, piece by piece." Ethan clenched his fists. "Not just me. Dani's next. The clinic, the center. He'll crush her to get to me." Riley's eyes narrowed. "Then fight him the only way he can't win." Ethan looked down at the purple coin resting near the files. Once, he'd used numbers to build empires. Tonight, he was ready to weaponize them for something worth more than profit. For the first time, math felt like survival. The next morning, Dani found Ethan at the playground, his eyes ringed with sleepless fire. Papers lay scattered on the bench beside him. "He's buying the center," Ethan said, voice hoarse. "If he gets it, this place is gone." Dani's shoulders sagged. "This playground is the only place Nia breathes easy. It's not just swings, Ethan. It's her lungs, her joy." His throat tightened. "Then I'll stop him." Dani placed a hand on his arm, steady and warm. "You can't fight him like before. No lawyers, no jets, no checkbooks. If you fight this time, fight like us, with truth." Her words struck deeper than any boardroom speech. Ethan closed his fist around the coin in his pocket, the crooked ridges digging into his skin. He understood. If Gavin's weapon was wealth, Ethan's had to be something stronger, something Gavin would never understand. The gym was packed, folding chairs scraping on waxed floors. Mayor Linda Hart stood at the front, eyes cautious. Gavin Stone entered in a polished gray suit, lawyers at his sides, smile rehearsed to perfection. "This town deserves development," he boomed. "Jobs, growth, opportunity." Murmurs swept through the crowd, half tempted, half doubtful. Ethan stepped forward in plain jeans and a work shirt. No polish, no entourage. His hands were rough, his voice at first unsteady. "This town doesn't need another man buying headlines. It needs a chance to breathe." The room hushed. Riley sat in the front row, her phone recording, finger hovering over the upload button. For Gavin, it was just business. For Ethan, it was the fight for a place where children laughed without fear. The gym wasn't just filled with neighbors. It was filled with history waiting to choose sides. The crowd murmured as Riley stood, laptop open. "There's something you need to hear," she said. She pressed play. Gavin's voice poured through the speakers, sharp and venomous. "I froze the cards the day he left. I built him. He was nothing without me." Gasps cut the air. Gavin leapt to his feet. "Illegally recorded. This is slander." Mayor Hart raised a steady hand. "Tonight we're not deciding legality. We're deciding trust." Ethan didn't move. He simply watched faces shift, confusion giving way to recognition. They had always suspected Gavin's cruelty. Now they heard it in his own words. Gavin adjusted his tie, fury flickering under his smile, but his charm cracked under the weight of truth. For the first time, his polished mask no longer fit. In the back row, Dani rose slowly, her eyes blazing. The crowd turned to her, waiting.
The microphone squealed, then steadied as Claire, Ethan's former CFO, stepped forward. Her hands trembled, but her voice was steel. "He threatened audits that didn't exist. He froze accounts to control us. I stayed silent because I was afraid, but not anymore." The crowd gasped. Gavin's face darkened. Then a mall security guard lifted a hand. "That mural everyone blamed Ethan for? I saw a man pay cash to borrow a hoodie. Didn't match Ethan's build. I've got stills." Murmurs rippled through the gym, shifting belief from Ethan's failures to Gavin's fingerprints. Ethan's chest tightened as silence pressed on Gavin like a weight. The empire of intimidation he had built was fraying at the edges. Ethan realized something he had never felt before in any boardroom battle.
he wasn't the only one carrying the truth anymore. The town itself was beginning to speak. Gavin's voice snapped like a whip. "Ask her," he shouted, pointing at Dani, "the nurse. She's part of this sympathy circus. He's buying her silence with playgrounds and pasta dinners." The gym erupted in whispers. Dani rose slowly, her gaze steady, voice ringing across the hall. "The only thing Ethan has given us is time and dignity. He didn't buy my silence, he earned my trust. That playground, it's where my daughter breathes. If you think that's a scheme, you've forgotten what it means to be human." The room thundered in applause, rolling and unstoppable. Gavin tried to shout over it, but his words drowned under the sound of neighbors choosing sides. Ethan's throat tightened. Dani hadn't just defended him, she had defended truth itself. In that moment, surrounded by echoes of clapping hands, Ethan knew he wasn't standing alone anymore.
The forum ended in noise, chairs scraping and voices clashing. But when the crowd spilled out into the night, they weren't divided, they whispered. By morning, those whispers spread across Dawsonville like wildfire. At the diner, Mrs. Holloway slid Ethan a slice of pie. "For the playground," she murmured. Her eyes carried something new, respect. Meanwhile, Gavin stormed through town hall, pressing hands, filing threats, scrambling to patch cracks in his empire. His voice was louder than ever, but his charm was fading. The mayor announced a special council vote on the land sale. For years, Ethan had fought boardrooms for numbers and contracts. Now he faced neighbors, parents, and children whose voices carried something money couldn't buy. Gavin had power, but Ethan had something he'd never held before: faith from a community willing to stand. And that was louder than any threat. That night, Ethan found a folded note slipped under his motel door. The block letters were jagged, written in black marker. "Leave before she loses everything." His chest tightened. He didn't need a signature to know it came from Gavin's shadow. For a moment, the old instinct returned. Run, disappear, leave before others got burned. He sat on the edge of the bed, the purple coin clenched in his fist, ridges biting into his palm. He had disappeared before, but this time it wasn't his reputation at stake. It was Dani's clinic, Nia's laughter, the playground that had given hope to strangers. Walking away now wouldn't be survival, it would be betrayal. Ethan crumpled the note, dropped it into a paper cup, and set it aflame. Watching the ashes curl, he whispered, "Not this time." The fight was here, and he wasn't leaving. The council chamber filled with folding chairs, the gym echoing with nervous murmurs. Gavin strode in first, flanked by lawyers, charts, and glossy promises. "This land means jobs, growth, a stronger Dawsonville," he boomed. Nods rippled through a few, doubt through others. Then Ethan stepped forward. Plain shirt, calloused hands, voice steady but unpolished. "You can sell this land and make money, or you can keep it and make history." The crowd stilled. He reached into his pocket, holding up the crooked purple coin. "A little girl gave me this, and it reminded me that people matter more than profit. Tonight isn't about me or Gavin. It's about what our children inherit." Silence filled the room like thunder waiting to break. Gavin adjusted his tie, smirk faltering. For once, the weight in the air didn't lean toward money. It leaned toward truth. Riley rose from her chair, holding up fresh documents. Wire transfers, zoning permits, hidden accounts, all roads pointing to Gavin. Gasps echoed through the chamber. "This is slander," Gavin snapped, surging forward. But before he could spin it, Councilwoman Ortiz leaned into the microphone. "Mr. Stone, this town is not for sale. Not to you, not to anyone." The mayor called for a vote. One by one, council hands rose. Unanimous. The land stayed in community trust. Gavin's face flushed crimson, his mask crumbling under the weight of public rejection. Cameras clicked.
Townsfolk whispered, and the polished empire he had built began collapsing in real time. He stormed out, shoving past reporters, fury cracking every word. Ethan didn't cheer. He simply closed his hand over the coin in his pocket and exhaled. Tonight wasn't about defeating Gavin. It was about protecting something sacred.
A week later, Ethan stood at a wooden table inside the community center. Papers lay neatly stacked before him. He signed his name, transferring funds into an irrevocable trust. The playground, the mural, the center, all of it would belong to Dawsonville, untouchable forever. The mayor signed next, her hand steady. Dani followed, tears glistening. "Why would you give all this away?" she whispered. Ethan's voice caught. "Because if it's mine, someone can steal it. If it's yours, it lasts." From the back, Nia clapped her hands and cheered, as if celebrating a victory at school. The room filled with quiet smiles, a hum of gratitude that felt thicker than applause. Ethan had once built towers and yachts. But here, with a table, a pen, and 2 coins in his pocket, he was building something stronger than empire. He was building roots. After the signing, Dani lingered, her hand brushing Ethan's arm. "You once had a scholarship program, didn't you?" Her eyes searched his. Ethan blinked, surprised. "I did. Years ago." Dani's lips trembled. "My late husband, he became a nurse because of it. We never knew who funded it." Ethan froze, the realization cutting deeper than he expected. The woman who had sheltered him, defended him, had already carried the ripple of his past kindness. His chest tightened. "I didn't know." Dani's eyes shimmered. "Maybe you were meant to be here all along." Ethan swallowed hard, tears pressing at the edge of his voice. All his life he thought redemption was something earned at the end of a road. But now, he saw it for what it was. A seed, planted years ago, blooming when it was needed most.
2 weeks later, the town gathered at the playground for a summer picnic. Blankets stretched across the grass, balloons bobbed, children chased each other through the newly painted mural's shadow. The scent of grilled food hung thick in the air. Ethan sat on a bench, watching as Nia clambered onto a chair. Her voice rang high and clear. "If someone's standing alone, you stand next to them." Laughter and applause filled the air. Ethan's chest swelled, his throat tight. That simple phrase, once whispered by a child in a grocery store, had become the anthem of a town. Dani sat beside him, her hand resting gently over his. He realized he wasn't holding his breath anymore. He was breathing, free and full. And for the first time in decades, he wasn't chasing applause or fearing judgment. He was home. As twilight settled, Ethan lingered by the swings, fireflies blinking across the grass. Children's laughter still echoed in the air, fading with the evening. Dani approached, her steps quiet, her smile soft. "You could have gone back, reclaimed everything you lost. Why stay here?" Ethan turned the purple coin in his palm, its ridges catching the fading light. "Because here I'm not a headline. I'm just a neighbor." Dani sat beside him, silence wrapping them like a blanket. For years, victory meant skyscrapers, contracts, and headlines. Tonight, it was measured in fireflies, in Dani's steady presence, in a town that had chosen kindness over fear. Ethan closed his eyes, letting the quiet seep into him. For the first time, he realized victory didn't roar. It whispered, and that whisper was enough to make him believe he belonged. As families packed up blankets and children rubbed tired eyes, Nia ran to Ethan, her braids swinging. She pressed something small into his palm, another coin, this one painted gold, letters crooked but clear, "Stay Helper." Ethan knelt, his throat tightening. "Why another one?" Nia grinned. "Because people forget. This way you won't." He pulled her into a hug, fierce and grounding. Dani stood nearby, eyes misting, her heart speaking what her lips didn't. "Thank you."
Ethan slipped both coins into his pocket, the weight heavier than any gold he'd ever owned. For decades, wealth had meant vaults, ledgers, applause. Now it meant 2 crooked coins from a child who believed in him. He stood, chest full, realizing the truth. For the first time in his life, he didn't just hold wealth, he held faith. And it was unshakable. That night, Ethan stood on Dani's porch, the town quiet beneath the glow of street lamps. The playground shimmered in the distance, the mural painted with the words, "Truth outlives noise." He turned the coin in his palm, whispering, "I don't need to remember, I just don't want to forget." For years, he had measured life in profits and losses. Tonight, he measured it in whispers, crooked coins, and the steady truth that home isn't where you hide, it's where you're finally seen. Behind him, Dani's voice floated softly, warm as light. "Come inside, Ethan, dinner's getting cold." He smiled, slipping the coin back into his pocket, not as a reminder of what he lost, but as proof of what he had finally found. And with that, the man who once had everything stepped into a small home, knowing he now held what mattered most: